Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Being Healthy. Now, being healthy has a lot to do with our parenting skills. Whether as a child we were being parented and we were instilled with healthy thoughts, healthy feelings, healthy pursuits, not what we were told to do, but what we saw around us from those who were parenting us. Some of us were parented by the biological parents, some were adopted, some were parented by grandparents or aunties, uncles, cousins, even older cousins. I had older cousins, a lot of older cousins. Some of us do. And we also know that parenting comes from every single thing we hear, feel, see, and do. We're constantly being parented and also reparented. And that's the beauty of it. We can reparent ourselves for the parts of parenting that are not working for us or didn't work for us at any point in time. When I was a teenager, I was exposed to the work of Khalil Gibran, the very well known Lebanese prophet. He actually wrote a book called The Prophet. Many of you will have probably heard of it and probably been very inspired and motivated by it. And I was really, really struck by this. This is something that he said that I'd like to share with you. And this has stayed with me ever since. And I keep coming back to it. This is Khalil Gibran's on children. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you, for life goes not backwards, nor tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children, as living arrows, are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness, for even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves also the bow that is stable. And I want to really focus on something that he says at the beginning, in the very beginning. Your children are not your children. And I'd like to add to that, and every child is your own. So we're responsible when we see a child being hurt. We are responsible for their safety, and we are responsible also to make sure that the child's well-being is paramount. The child's well-being must be paramount. So I'm going to show you something which I think most of you already know of, and it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So most of you know this, some people do not. And it's interesting because this has been used a lot in psychology. But one of the most important thing that you need to know about this chart is what it says at the end, at the very bottom, where it says poverty traps. So here is what Maslow came up with. And I have different charts on this, different interpretations of of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So this one is about basic income and Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So everything about whether or not our needs is met as children, or if we help to meet the needs of our children, will decide a lot about their own income bracket or how they financially peruse the world. So to the left, you will see it says basic income effects, sustainable societal and economic progress. To the right, you'll see the needs. The needs are self-actualization, higher purpose, innovation, creativity, and breakthroughs. One affects the others. On the left, you'll see basic income effects, growing productive members of society. If you want your children to be productive members of society, to the right, their needs are for self esteem, for achievement, and self improvement. So you need to teach them not by what you say to them, but how you behave in your own life. If you behave from a place of self esteem, they'll become growing, productive members of society. If you come from a place of low self esteem, they will not be equipped to do so, most likely, unless someone else intervenes and helps them to do so. To the left, you'll see basic income and needs are met with their basic income as when they grow up and their needs are met. To the right, that depends on if their need for love and belonging, which means societal cohesion or social cohesion and communal unity, or have been expressed or seen, or they have grown up in such an environment. To the left, you'll see freedom from fear, whether they have a problem with survival. They're always, everything in their life is about survival, and they have issues with survival. They can overcome that and have freedom from fear if they've been given as children safety and security. So they've been feeling safe and secure in the home. But if they will never feel safe and secure in the home unless you do too, because they get this from us, the grown-ups around them. To the left, you'll see freedom from want. So one of the basic needs for surviving. And to the right, what they will need from you, from all of us as a society of grown-ups, is basic survival needs. So psychological life sustenance. This is really important chart, and we have their actual QR code in case you would like to take a photograph of it and explore this some more. Now, I've got some more charts for you to look at as well. And I will come back to that in a moment. Right now, I want to talk about the 4 types of parenting styles, and you will see them all here. And it's really interesting, the 4 types of parenting styles. I hope you can see them well. They're not very well marked, but the parenting style that you choose to use is the most important for the outcome. Very, very important for the outcome. And we're going to come back to this because I want to go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So let's go from the psychological needs. Every single one of physiological needs. Every single one of us have these physiological needs, no matter where we were born, to whom we were born, in what environment we grew up in. The physiological needs are for the elements. Water. We must have water, not just to bathe with or to wash, but in our bodies. So it is said that below the neck, the body is about 75% water, above the neck, about 85% water. So we need water to survive. We cannot live without air. We know when a person has left their bodies and the earth because the air has left as well. We know when a child has come in to their bodies because they start breathing. So we have a need for shelter. Human beings have a need for shelter. Animals in the wild, they find shelter very easily, but they have specific needs for shelter. And every animal, depending on the animal and where they live, their environment, they have a different version of shelter. We human beings have a different version in too. We have a need for food of some sort, and it needs to be the food that really sustains us, but not just sustains us, but gives us vibrancy and healing and health. We also have a physiological need for sleep. We all know that when we're very sleep deprived, oh my gosh, especially if this goes on and on and on, how very much that really affects us. And then we have a need for clothing because we're different kinds of climates, and for different kinds of climates, we need different kinds of clothing. So these are the physiological needs that every single parent needs to focus on in order to meet these child's hierarchy of needs. So this is the base needs, the basic ones, the ones at the most basic at the very bottom of their needs. I should say the very top of their needs, because once these are met, then it's easier to meet the other needs. So the next need is for safety. What did we mean by that? Security, health. They must have vibrant health. If they're a sickly child, they will not feel safe. Is very, very important. They need also the feeling of safety for the properties around them, anything around them, their own home, their room, wherever it is that they are, they need to feel safe in there. Their other need, the next need, and this is along the hierarchy, you can see you have the physiological needs first. Those must be met. Those are the greatest needs. Safety need is met. And then as a child, love and belonging, for need for family, friendship, intimacy. And it's not just for them. They need to see it mirrored in their family. So if you've not seen the actual connection between family members, a deep, intimate connection, and or you don't see your family members interacting with really great, incredibly deep friendships, you no longer have that need met. And because you need to learn from the parents exactly what friendships are. If your parents, you find them that they grow up with a lot of betrayal, that you see their friendships, they betray their friendships, or their friends betray them, or you see betrayal going on in the family, and you see that there's no deep sense of intimacy between them, that's a need that has not been fulfilled for you as well. Now, also the same thing with self-esteem, respect, and status. That's the next one that they need. But you see, it's a smaller one as you go up the scale here. So all the others affect self-esteem. The physiological needs do, the safety needs, the feeling of love and belonging, the need for that affects their self-esteem, their self-respect, and their status. So if a child feels that their status in the family is of the lowest level and people really don't want to see them, like children should be seen but not heard, that's going to affect their own feeling of self-esteem. And of course, the last one is self-actualization, when a child can be themselves. So these are all the needs that we need to provide for children. It's very, very important, these needs. And if these needs are not met, we're going to really be going into parenthood with a feeling of deception. We cannot be the parents that we need to be, because if we're actually raising children along the parameters of mainstream media and from advertising, and we think that being a parent is simply giving birth and having a lot of money to buy toys and take them to circuses and to playgrounds that are equipped with very expensive toys for them to play with, or if they think that buying the child the best of clothes, the best of this, the most recent fad, if that's part of love, they're not going to be equipped with that feeling that their own nurturing from within is being neglected. And they're only being nurtured on the outside with things. They're going to also attach things to that feeling of self-esteem, that the more they have is the more that they're being acknowledged. Or the only way that they're being acknowledged is by giving them things rather than giving them a for self. And that's what we've actually started to do in society, because if you look at all media, most media, especially, I'm talking about mainstream media, of course, and most training in hospitals, it seems that the nurturing is done from without, not from within. And so that's one of the deceptions of parenthood, that we don't need to change ourselves before we have children. Just by having a child, just by the biological ability to conceive a child, to give birth to a child, and it doesn't matter how we give birth. We think it doesn't matter how we give birth, that we can have cesarean births and all this other stuff. You know, some people have actually called it concierge birth, and because it's according to a doctor's schedule, or according to what fits in with the hospital schedule. And why are we giving birth in hospitals anyway? It's not an illness, it's not a disease to give birth. There are people still around the world, still are doing it, and they always have done it from time immemorial, who give birth in a field while working The baby drops, they pick the baby up, they wipe it off, and they put it on their backs, and they continue working. Or they may have to stop to feed the baby. And the baby is perfectly well. But now it's almost as if pregnancy and giving birth is a disease. We have to go to see a medical doctor. We have to have medical intervention all the time. I'm not talking about birthing that has problems or difficulties where we do need some intervention. I'm talking about just natural childbirth. This also affects that hierarchy of needs. We're going to go back to it in a moment so you can also see that. So this too, I call one of the deceptions of parenting is thinking that our power needs to be given over to a hospital or a doctor just because we're becoming parents. That's what I'm talking about. That's part of the deception of parenting, that we don't have, or that we have we do have an innate perception of what parent is like. It's natural in nature to bond with a child. But there are many parents who do not bond with their children. And people say, oh, something is wrong with them. No, it could be that they have not taken the time to develop themselves either. So if we want to give birth, we need to work on ourselves first. So one of the deceptions of parenting is that we do not need to work on ourselves, that we're fine as we are, and however we parent will be fine as well. So when I was a teenager, I thought the parenting ought to be an actual degree. So we would have, in order to become a parent, you'd have to study and also take exams and receive a certificate before one could parent. And that's when I was a teenager. And I remember thinking, when I'm prime minister, if I ever become prime minister, parenting will be outlawed unless one actually goes through all of these studies and these actual examinations first, meaning tests, and we pass with flying colors. And if we don't, we just will learn. The thing is that I said before that we do have an innate ability. It's instinctual how to connect with a child and how to parent, whether it's to mother, to father. Yes, but that needs to be built on as well. And if we're not eating proper foods, real foods, if we're not well hydrated, if we have a lot of excess baggage we're carrying, both internally from excess toxicity or the baggage that was passed on to us from our own parents, then we will have a problem giving birth or being an exceptional parent, a parent who actually knows in how to pull their instinct forward, who lives by their instinct, by their own intuition, because the intuition, the instinct are always buried when we're feeling sick and depleted and exhausted and tired. How can we actually parent when we haven't parented ourselves? And that's why at the beginning I spoke about reparenting ourselves. So we need to reparent ourselves before, in some aspects. Some people, it's not all aspects. Some people, it's just some of them before we can become parents. And one of the deceptions of parenting is that, oh, it will all happen. Don't worry, whatever you do will be fine. And maybe it will be fine. Maybe that soul needed to come into a family where parenting skills are very small, short, and very limited. Maybe that's what the child came here to learn. However, as a society, we're finding out that we're bringing up misfits in many places, and the hierarchy of needs are not being met. So, to go back to the hierarchy of needs, here is another graph showing you Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is an extended one. So we already spoke about the physiological needs being the most important one. So that's why it's at the bottom. Without that, without the root being taken care of a tree, the tree is not going to grow strong and healthy and spread out. Safety needs have to be met. Belonging, feeling a sense of belonging and love needs are must be taken care of, but we need to see it around us. We cannot, it doesn't really give a child love if we don't feel loved. So we need to really work on ourselves first. So I think we have to do as parents is to give ourselves these first before we can give this to the parent, to the child. If you don't have this in yourself and you do not feel this for your own self, you cannot give it away. We cannot give away what we don't have. The esteem needs, we're going to come back to that, by the way. You need to have a high sense of esteem for yourself in order for your children to also inherit that. So the cognitive needs must also be met. The aesthetic needs must also be met. I mean, if you grew up in a household of chaos with a lot of filth and dirt and nothing was ever clean and things were just thrown around or you too many toys and you were tripping over them, this is going to bring a lot of clutter into your life, and you're going to also create a lot of clutter on many different levels, and we'll go into that in a moment. And then there's a self-actualization phase, and then from that becomes transcendence. So let's go back to the phase of what it is that a child needs from us. We cannot give to a child something that it needs until we have given it to ourselves first, which is why I said we have to reparent ourselves first. We have to look at the way that we are schooled, and we have to look also at the way in which we were parented. And sometimes we have to forgive our parents and forgive ourselves as well. When we forgive our parents, we begin to realize that they also just did what they thought needed to be done. I'm not saying they did the best they could, because I do not believe that. Every time somebody says, oh, they just did the best they could, I don't believe that, because in this day and age, we all have the ability to be more. We have the ability to get information and advice. For example, this live stream right now, you can get information from here and change from here. So if you're a grandparent, you can reparent differently the way you reparented your children, or if you're a grand aunt or grand uncle. So you can redo this, you can change this. And by the way, I'm including teachers in here when I say parenting, because here's the problem. We raise a child at home, but then we give it over to a school afterwards for quite a lot of hours. They can unparent what we have done or show a whole different style, which will just confuse the child even more, that can create more chaos for them. So we've got to know who's teaching our children. Part of parenting is knowing that some people choose to parent at home, to school their children at home. But not everyone is able to do that. Some people are single parents and they need to go out to work. That's why it's really important to know what is being taught at school, who is teaching them, and what the teacher's background is. And have they met their own needs as well, their own hierarchy of needs? This is all things that are so important that before one can become a teacher, I think one has to go through all these hierarchy of needs and meet them for oneself. And I think that needs to be part of the training for teachers. Really, really important. And I'm going to put this one up, this chart up, because this week shows everything that I just said, but it shows it through images. So one of the things that we need to start thinking of is what we feed our children and how we feed our children. If we're feeding our children with things that are artificial or with a tremendous amount of toxicity, we're going to get children brought up on artificial and toxic environment, internal environment. But also, what is the external environment like? Most likely, if the internal environment, because of what the food and the drinks that are being given to them, when I say food, I do include beverages, by the way. If we are being brought up with toxicity in our food supply, then of course there's going to be a huge problem. Of course, the children are going to get toxic behavior from toxic food, because the cells interact with each other, and the brain cells interact with the stomach and with whether or not the gut is clean or not. The brain interacts with how we sleep, how we get along throughout the day. Very, very important. The brain reacts with our sense of safety. If you are being fed toxic foods as a child, then you're not going to feel very safe. Life will not feel safe to you at all. So all of these things are really, really important. And now I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning, that there are different types of parenting skills. And so it's up to us to really look at the different types of parenting and choose which one works for us, but not just for us, but also for our children. So, for example, we can look at the authoritarian parenting. If you had a parent who was an authoritarian, are you going to either parent the same way because that's what you know, or are you going to go the very opposite way? So be careful when you're parenting that you're not going against what you knew, and you're leaning too much overboard in the opposite direction. We need to find that sense of balance and begin to know the child. Each child needs to be parented differently. Those of you who have twins, or who, if you have two or three children, you know that each child needs to be parented differently. Don't expect what worked for one child, a style of parenting that worked for one child, to work for another child. So be careful about doing reverse parenting. And then I'm going to go back to what I said before in order to close this, and that is from Khalil Gibran. Please, if you're thinking of parenting, read this over and over, and I strongly suggest his book, The Prophet. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you, for life goes not backward nor tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children, as living arrows, are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he sends you with his might. And he bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness, for even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves the bow that is stable. And this brings us to stability. If you don't feel stability into your life, your child will never feel stability. And this will be an issue for them for the rest of their lives until they deal with it. You might have inherited a lot of stuff from your own parents, your grandparents, the great grandparents, your ancestors that have been passed down from one to another. If you wish to be a parent, you need to deal with that. So I took this course. These courses I actually studied with Bert Hellinger's teachers, and it was looking really at the relationships that we pass down from one to the other, and how, without really knowing it, we continue making the same mistakes, or we continue giving the same incredibly nurturing feelings that we were given as well. So we pass things on without even realizing it. We become that which we identify with. So if you identify more with your father, then look at your father's lineage and see what it is about your father and his father's lineage that you identify with so much and appeals to you, and bring that very much into your own parenting and use that to assist you when you parent as well. If you preferred being with your grandmother rather than being with your own mother, then also look at that as well, because that will also very much, very strongly influence you and how you parent as well. So, with that said, thank you for coming today. I am so glad you were able to be here, and I trust this was helpful to you.